WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Deb Andraca from Whitefish Bay is the Democratic incumbent candidate in the 23rd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Deb Andraca, welcome to WisconsinEye.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
Well, thanks for participating in our candidate interview. I want to start by asking you, what is your campaign's key message and why are you running again for this office?
So I ran in 2020 on the platform of a safer, smarter, healthier Wisconsin. And for me, that means safer means better gun laws, safer communities, combating reckless driving. Smarter means support for K-12 education. I was an elementary school teacher before I was elected. And healthier, I divide between environmental conservation and taking a look ahead to climate change, making sure we have clean air, clean water, and preserving all of Wisconsin's natural areas in the state.
So if you're reelected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to be introducing this upcoming session?
Well, I was inspired to run for office based on some of my work with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. I was working as a substitute teacher, and I had to go through lockdown drills like my daughters did and most students do. And we had a lockdown drill one day where I had the wrong key. I couldn't secure the classroom because I was a substitute and run in just a couple hours before. And I saw the look on my kids' faces when the school resource officer came in and yelled at me in front of my kids. And I knew I just had to take some more action. So I ran for office because I was inspired after the governor, the legislature gavelled in and gavelled out a special session on gun laws. And that's when I knew that we weren't going to change anything. I had talked to my state rep over and over about trying to get some better gun laws, like background checks and extreme risk protection orders, those that other states have that we know work. But they stopped meeting with me and then they stopped holding town halls. And so I ran on that platform. Those are two bills that I keep introducing, and we've never even had a public hearing on those bills. So if I could bring any bills up, even for discussion, it would probably be to make sure that Wisconsin's gun laws are stronger.
Well, as you know, if you're reelected, you'll be entering the legislature again during a biennial budget year. Wisconsin projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your priority for use of that surplus?
Well, I'm on the Joint Finance Committee, so it'll be front and center for me as we talk about how to use the surplus. And whenever we have more money in the state than we were expecting, we should return some of it to the people in the state. However, the surplus is one-time money. This is a combination of tax receipts and federal funds, things that came into the state largely due to the COVID pandemic. And so when we're talking about doing tax relief, if we're talking about tax cuts that go on indefinitely, at some point the state's going to get into trouble. So what I would like to see the surplus used is for things like capital expenditures, infrastructure, investments in those costly items that can make a difference going forward, but don't put the state in a precarious position a couple budgets from now.
So you mentioned taxes. Is there a particular type of tax relief, one-time tax credit that you would be supporting with use of the surplus?
Well, my constituents tell me all the time to keep the lid on taxes, and so I think we need to look at it holistically on what the state budget looks like. So there are lots of good ideas out there, and it will depend sort of what things look like when we get back into budget season.
K-12 education, you mentioned that as a priority. What's your leading issue on K-12 education?
Well, my kids are in college now, and I have seen, even with my local schools, which are some of the best in the state, that they're constantly being forced to do more with less. And that's partly a result of chronic underfunding from the state and inflation. When costs go up and you get the same amount of money coming from Madison, you have to do more with less. My top priority going into the next budget is going to be increased funding for special education, because we only reimburse public schools 33% of those expenses, and all of that has to come out of the general education budget. So we really need to get that up to more parity, at least 60-70% for every student. Because if we can fix that, that will help every single school all across the state, no matter if they're an urban school or rural school or in a suburban area. Just fixing that funding formula can go a long way towards addressing all of the referenda that we're currently experiencing in so many districts.
As you know, the University of Wisconsin system has been a big topic of discussion in the legislature. What does the future of Wisconsin's higher education system, 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, technical colleges, what does that look like to you? What should the legislature focus on?
Colleges top of mind right now with 2 kids in college. We need to be investing more in the UW system. What I hear from employers is there's a labor shortage. And I didn't grow up in Wisconsin, got here as soon as I could, lived here for about 22 years. And I know that once you move to Wisconsin, you want to stay here because it's amazing. And our universities are the way that we can get young people, young families, that kind of talent into the state so that they can fill the jobs that all of our employers are saying that they need. So I was just looking at some employment data and just looking at some of the job categories that we're going to be needing in the future. A lot of them have to do with some of the degrees that are offered in Madison and Milwaukee. So we need to not only be protecting those institutions, but making sure that they're meeting the needs of students, because not only is it the Wisconsin idea to invest in our young people so that they can make the future of the state better, but it also brings more people into the state. And that's something that we need going forward when you look at the demographics.
Maybe related to what you just said, what do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how should the legislature address it?
I think it's demographics. Wisconsin is an aging state, and as more people retire, we need more young people to enter the workforce to make sure that we are supporting the economy. And if we don't start addressing some of those problems that young families have, it's so expensive to raise a child, healthcare costs, childcare costs. It is really, really hard to raise kids right now. I know because I have 2 in college, so I would like for the state to start investing in some of those supports for young families, whether that's paid family leave or bringing down the cost of childcare. When we bring down the cost of childcare, we have more parents who can enter the workforce. So it not only supports young families and helps them thrive, but it also addresses the labor shortage. So I think that's a really important area for the state to look at.
More on the workforce. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there aren't any requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I would, because if we're going to be investing money in the state, it should stay in the state, and we should make sure that that money thrives. I mean, when we are investing in infrastructure, it's not just the salaries of the people doing the work, but it's where they go to lunch, and it's where they buy a house, and are they moving into our state. So if we have people who are in the state already working, we can train more Wisconsin workers. And then it's just not a one-time investment in a project and then the benefits leave. Then we're getting a workforce that's better able to do more utility scale projects, more construction. Clean energy is one of the fastest growing fields in terms of jobs created and needs for employment. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to take a look at how can we start training more engineers, more electricians that are here in Wisconsin and keep them here so that we can grow a green economy going forward. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue and what should be done about it?
I have heard of it, and to me, it just sounds like cheating. If we're going to have a thriving economy, then everybody needs to pay their fair share. So I would like to see all employers follow the rules, follow the law. It seems pretty basic to me.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability, rent control, or building more rentals, or other?
I wish there was a simple solution. I mean, I have looked into it, and I can just see housing prices in my own neighborhood, and they've just skyrocketed. And it's multifaceted. We need to have more supply so that there are more options and more units available, particularly to families and young people who are just starting out. But we also need to look at the demand side of the equation. So I don't think there's one quick fix, and I think it's something that we need to look at. And the solution might be different in different parts of the state, depending on the market and what the housing needs are. So I hear about it all the time. I understand, particularly with seniors who are trying to stay in their house when their property taxes are going up. So I think it depends on who we're talking about, which neighborhoods and which parts of the state. It's complicated, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't address it.
Is there something the legislature could do?
We had a housing package in the last session that would kind of nibbled around the edges. I think a lot of what we've been looking at is trying to increase the supply. How can we make sure that we can get more housing units on board? I just came back from Madison a matter of a few hours ago, and the number of cranes there is astonishing. And Dane County is growing faster than any other county in the state by far. So what they're doing with allowing more permits and getting some more apartment buildings up and running, I think that they are probably addressing it in the right way, but I don't know that there's a one-size-fits-all solution in the state.
Healthcare. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Oh, we've been fighting about this on the Joint Finance Committee quite a bit. We have money that's set aside to help keep hospital rooms open in the western part of the state, and there are many facets to this problem. The short-term solution is to get the money out of the Joint Finance Committee and make sure that those emergency rooms, labor and delivery rooms can stay open. Long-term, we need to look at funding. The shortest term, maybe not the shortest term, but the one that we've been talking about forever is expanding Medicaid. Well, the state is literally leaving billions of dollars on the table that we could be bringing in to help bring down costs and keep hospitals open, particularly in rural areas. We have been pushing for that as Democrats for years and years, and quite frankly, it's baffling why we haven't done it so far.
Mental health care is also a growing concern for many Wisconsinites and concern for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this issue, and how would you address mental health care?
Mental health is huge. My daughter, in fact, is studying to be a child's mental health professional. I told her that, unfortunately, she's going to have really good job prospects. I think we need to look at it on the K-12 education level, making sure that there are more mental health practitioners in the schools where they're easier to access. I think we need to do a better job at community-based care. I know Governor Evers, in his last budget and his next budget, we're going to be investing tens of millions of dollars into trying to get more professionals out there and trying to make care more accessible. We should be looking at it just like we do any other healthcare issue, and it's something that's not going to go away anytime soon. And in fact, I was knocking on doors and talking with a constituent who does mental health care as a profession. She used to work in the schools, and she was saying we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, that there's that COVID generation is still coming through. And so making sure that we have more counselors, we have more opportunity for kids to be able to take breaks and to just address their needs on site. I'd like to see more investment in that, particularly having experienced that in the classroom.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion? Do you have a position on whether there should be different limits and exceptions than currently are?
My position is simple. Let women decide. As a legislator, I don't think I have any business telling a physician what he or she can and cannot do in their medical practice. So I think we need to trust women. I have heard just absolute horror stories from people who were seeking abortions and they couldn't get them. Abortion is health care. You may need an abortion during a pregnancy for all kinds of reasons, at any time. When we set arbitrary time limits, we are interfering with that patient-doctor relationship. So I would like for us all to just trust women and let doctors decide what's best for their patients.
Moving on to transportation, what are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs be addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Well, I've got I-43 going right through my district, and it has been a project and a half, but kudos to DOT, because when I was first elected, the project was starting, and I really thought it'd be a big issue, and I would hear a lot of constituent complaints, and yes, there've been a lot of exits closed, and it has been a challenge, but it's largely run very smoothly. So we're fixing the roads, as Governor Evers likes to say. But I also hear from some of my employers in the northern part of the state, or of my district, where the bus line from Milwaukee ends. And this was a particular problem during COVID because the buses didn't run as late, and they needed to get employees there to work at a nursing home, which obviously is open 24 hours a day. We've been underfunding public transportation for quite a long time. We need to invest more in public transportation. Even if you don't take the bus, people like to have choices. So this is an issue that I think we need to do a lot more on coming up in the next budget. Haven't been able to make much project on it. We're doing a good job fixing the roads, but we also need to do a good job addressing transportation needs for people who cannot or choose not to drive a car.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how should the legislature address it?
I think it's a basic responsibility of government to make sure that everyone has clean drinking water and safe drinking water. This is something we've been arguing about on the Joint Finance Committee. Governor Evers called the Joint Finance Committee into a special meeting to address exactly that. It's a power that he has that's written in state statute. The Republicans didn't show up for the meeting. If we can't talk about it, we can't fix it. Now, this is part of the PFAS Trust Fund, and so it's giving money to communities to fix their wells. We need to stop arguing about the details of the bill and start getting money to people who need it. As you mentioned earlier, we do have a $3 billion surplus. The fact that we have that kind of a surplus sitting in Madison and there's people who can't drink their tap water, it's unconscionable. So we need to address the short-term needs of people who have contaminated wells, and then also look at why they're contaminated in the first place and make sure that we are regulating and holding polluters accountable.
Final two questions for you today. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Well, I don't know much about my opponent. I have tried to meet her on a couple of occasions. She hasn't been out knocking doors, or I don't know anyone who has met her, so I guess I'll have to leave it there for people to make up their minds. So I'm out on all social media platforms and knocking doors and trying to meet as many constituents as I can. So when I meet her, hopefully we'll be able to have a debate sometime before the end of the campaign season.
If you're reelected and you have a magic wand, you can wave over the state capitol regarding one issue that brings both sides together. What would that issue be?
So I was just in Madison because I was attending the Bowie Institute for Legislative Leadership Development. And this is a program that's for legislators who are in their first 4 years of service. And it was all about how to foster bipartisanship in state capitals. And I think, honestly, of all of the Midwestern legislatures that were represented there, I think we are probably rock bottom as to true bipartisan compromise, friendships, just the ability to work across the aisle. So I'm very optimistic because this coming election, is the first one on our fair maps. And we have a lot more competitive districts. So you're not going to have all the Democrats in blue districts and Republicans in deep red districts. And so I'm optimistic that we can start breaking some of those habits, that we can start working together and talking to each other, not as opponents, even in an election year, but start to develop those relationships that really allow you to craft good public policy that benefits the state, not one party or another. So that would be my magic wand.
Well, thank you, Deb Andraca from Whitefish Bay, the Democratic incumbent candidate for the 23rd Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Deb Andraca, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
It's been great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.